Good evening. My name is George Sexton. I'm with MH Software, and tonight's presentation is on usability testing websites. So let's get started. So first question is, what is usability testing? Basically, it's really simple. It's just called watching regular people try to use your website or an application to accomplish a task. So why do we have usability problems? I think the big winner is this one, this quote. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the experts, there are few. And the way I think this quote applies is that we lose the ability to see our work through the eyes of a beginner. So, in other words, we know what we're supposed to click on, so there's no mystery to us. Where a beginner approaches our website, there's a lot of mystery. So how pervasive are usability issues? They are everywhere. I got a haircut, and this is what the terminal said. Enter tip plus OK. If you look at the image, you'll see there's not a button labeled OK. Also, here's another example from a really, really large-scale vendor, and this is their ticketing system. And their ticketing system has kind of this whole thing where I can set up posts and followers. So they have this weird Frankenblog thing built into their case management system. Who thought this was a good idea? So why do we want to do usability testing? Well, the first reason you might want to do usability testing is if your bounce rate is higher than you think it should be. People are landing on your page and then leaving. If someone on your development team is insisting on things that concern you, so I've got a really great example of that coming up, or conversions aren't what you like. So you're getting a lot of people coming to your site, but they're not converting. Or, least likely of all, you're proactively trying to improve your business processes. So really, usability testing is about the funnel. So let's take an example. If I have 1,000 visitors to my site and 1/4 of those visitors move through each step, at the end I have 16 people or 16 visitors that got to the end and became conversions. So that's like, let's see, 16, 1.6% conversion rate. If I just change that and I say that half of my visitors move through each step, then you can see at the end of each step, I have more users, and at the very end of the process, instead of 16 users, I have 63 or 4 users. Huge difference. So it's really about the funnel and getting more people through. So there are two ways of doing usability testing. The first way is called formal usability testing. And informal usability testing, you use carefully chosen testers, and you get some really lovely statistically valid outcomes. And at the end, you also have what Steve Krug calls a big honkin' report, which details all of the problems that were found, statistical analysis, and what should be done. And this is really super expensive. It's really, unless you are in the top tier of software vendors, it's really going to be out of your means. People that can afford to do this and that should be doing this are Microsoft, Ford Motor Company, people like that. The second methodology is what I call informal usability testing. And with informal usability testing, you set a low bar for your qualifying testers. In other words, you're not trying to create statistically valid samples, so you don't care so much about the ratio of men to women. You're not looking for people with a certain income demographic or a certain educational demographic. You're setting a pretty low bar. This means it's not statistically valid, but it is tons easier. And that makes it more affordable, which means that you can do it over and over. Because, going backwards for a second, once you fix your first 3 problems, you don't have any, it's not that you don't have any more problems, you just have a new top 3. So you want to be able to do usability testing often. So how should I do usability testing? Well, my recommendation is you use Steve Krug's books. I refer to them as the Bibles. The first one is called Rocket Surgery Made Easy, and the accompanying volume on designing usable websites is called Don't Make Me Think Revisited. So these are the two books and two references that I recommend that you use for doing your usability testing. Not this book. It's a lovely book, and the writers put a huge amount of effort into it, but this is formal usability testing, and it's going to talk about how to get statistically valid samples, how to get how to create a report, how to do analysis. So this is formal, and it's going to be very difficult and very expensive. So how do you qualify testers? Well, a lot of people think that your testers have to match your target audience, and that's really not the case. Domain knowledge is not nearly as important as everyone likes to believe. So if you're selling, for example, tile on a website, you don't need tile vendors to or tile purchasers to test your website because they're similar enough to regular people. And we have a strong urge that looks to find a tester that looks like us as developers, or it looks like our ideal customer. And this is really a damaging idea because if I sat and did an analysis of my customers, only about a fifth of my customers match my ideal. So if I match my website for my ideal customer, then basically I'm saying I'm going to optimize my website for 20% of my visitors or customers. That's just not a strategy for success. So Steve Krug in his book says, recruit loosely and grade on a curve. So if you recruit somebody and they turn out to not be as skilled as you would have liked, then don't disregard everything they say, but take the readings with, take their input with a grain of salt. So the next question is, how do we get usability testers? And the easiest thing to do is to recruit from among your friends, your family, acquaintances. I've gone to meetups. I went to a WordPress meetup and solicited for testers there. And when you solicit for testers, what you really need to keep in mind is that you're asking them to give up the most precious thing they possess, the most irreplaceable commodity they have, which is their time. It's something they can't get more of. So you need to make your testing, your desires worth their while. And the way I do that is I use gift cards to entice people to be testers for me. For a normal website, I would do a $50 to $100 gift card. I tend to use Visa gift cards rather than targeted gift cards, for example, Starbucks or a restaurant, for the simple reason if somebody needs to buy groceries, then they're not going to really appreciate a Starbucks card very much. It's not going to be much of an enticement. So my thinking is to use Visa, Amex, whatever general purpose credit card gift cards. If you are doing a professional website, for example, a website targeted at cardiologists, and you need doctors or cardiology nurses to do your testing, then expect to pay a lot more. So how many testers do you need? The good answer is not very many. 3 or 4 is a good number. Steve Krug says this, and what he says is borne out by my experience. Because if you have more than 3 or 4 people testing your site, you're going to hear the same issues come up over and over. So how many times do you need to be told that a page is confusing? And it's better to do 2 rounds of testing with 3 people than 1 round of 6, because as I mentioned earlier, as you solve the top end problems, it doesn't mean you have no problems left on your site. It means you have a new set of top end. So if you can do 2 rounds, you're going to get a lot more issues fixed. So what do we need for a test environment for our usability testing? Well, I've done usability testing in a conference room. I've done it in a bar in a brewery's game room. I've done it in a grocery store dining room. I've done it in my home. So the key requirements for testing or for a test environment are people will agree to meet you there, which means if they're 20 miles or 40 miles away, then you're probably going to have to go to them. And the second one is safety. If you're a male and you're soliciting for female testers, or if you're soliciting for minors to test something, then safety is going to be of paramount concern to your testers. So you need to make sure that it's an environment that they will feel safe in. You'll need to be able to work without too much distraction, and it has to be available when you want to do it. So another element to think about when you're determining where should I do usability testing is who's going to participate. If it's just one facilitator, then that has a totally different set of options than if you have a team of people. If you're going to do a team of people, ideally you should have a second room for your team to watch in, and so that's going to require you to have at least a more formal setting, perhaps 2 conference rooms, one conference room for your testing, one conference room for your team. So continuing on with talk about who's participating, if you're doing, and your test environment. So if you're doing a single facilitator, really all you need is some screen recording software. I use Camtasia because I also use it for doing tutorials or something similar. And then you need a laptop and a microphone because you want to be able to record the user in case you have questions about what exactly they said, what exactly their feedback was. If you're doing usability testing with a team, then you need not only the screen recording software, but you want some sort of screen sharing software. For example, Citrix GoToAssist or WebEx, or even you could use VNC in conjunction with Camtasia for your recording. Now, Citrix and WebEx, I believe, have screen recording, so you could use that. So here is the only rule about usability testing, and it's really important. You are testing the site or application, and that's it. You are not testing the tester. You're not there to assess their ability, and if there's a problem, you have to accept that it is in the site or in the application. If you cannot accept this, if you're just too involved, if you're too close to the project to maintain this level of detachment, then you need to get somebody else to be your facilitator. And more importantly, it's just if you cannot control, if you become upset and want to abuse the tester, then that's just not ethical. It's not ethical to abuse somebody and take out your frustrations over your site on an innocent. So that's me. So actually doing the test. So here are the steps. First, find your testers. Second, schedule your tests. Create a script. Steve Krug's book has some really excellent examples on creating a script and what the components of the script should be. Get your incentives. For me, this means going to the store and purchasing my Visa gift cards. Prepare legal releases. Since I'm recording people, Steve Krug recommends this as well, I create a release and I assure my testers in the release that this is going to be used for internal use only. They're not going to wind up on YouTube. And then this is another important step. Test your script on an in-house guinea pig. Now you may remember earlier when I was talking about where to find testers, one of the things I did not say was use your in-house employees. because they're too close. They're going to have too much internal knowledge. But this is one place where you can break the rule. So you want to use an internal tester from your organization to be a guinea pig to go over your script to help you fine tune it. And actually you can I tested a script on an internal person and actually came up with quite a few improvements that I needed to make. So definitely test your script using an internal guinea pig. And then perform your tests and review your test results. And the final step is really the most important one. Fix what you find, because it doesn't do any good to have gone through all the effort if you're not going to actually use the results. So I've got a couple actual sites and applications that I did usability testing on, and I'm just going to show you the kinds of things that usability testing found and how we addressed them. So the first one was on Westminster Church. Their website was professionally created by a company that specializes in the church vertical market. This is what that company did. The site was created with input from staff and members of the church, and it was terrible. It was so bad, and I could not convince anyone it had problems because, frankly, they'd spent a boatload of money on this site and they didn't want to hear that it had problems. So the way I addressed this site was I used two tools. I used a best practices checklist and I used usability testing. So the best practices checklist, for them, I just Googled for church website best practices and found one. And then I did usability testing with 3 or 4 people. So the first area I want to talk about is information for visitors. You know, a key aspect of a church's website or key audience for a church website is potential visitors. Visitors drive down the road, they say, oh, that church looks interesting, I wonder what it's like, and they go to the website long before they ever walk in the door. So having a website that is good for visitors is key for a church. So on this site, they had pages for visitors, they had About Us, and then in the header and associated pages, they had a New to Westminster link, and then they had a slider that also had a New to Westminster image. And so what our testers told us is, one user said that they would click on About Us first, and another said they would click on Ministries, and none of the 4 testers identified New to Westminster as a place they would click. So I recommend that they remove the New to Westminster button and rename the About Us section to First Time Visitors or I'm New or Learn About Us, something that would give a new potential attender an idea that this is the page they should go to. The next one, and remember earlier I said when people have things that concern you, this is a thing that concerned me. On their website, they had a missions menu, and underneath the missions menu, they had, I swear, the words Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. And if you're not a church person, if you are a church person, you might recognize this as from the Great Commission where Jesus sends forth his disciples. So what I recommended, of course, nobody understood this. In fact, one of our testers was actually attended a different church, but she taught Sunday school, both adult and children's Sunday school. She'd been a church member all of her life. And if she didn't understand this, when I asked her, well, what do you think you would get if you clicked on these? Her response was, well, these must be areas where you have active mission trips. And so we looked at that and we renamed those options from missions instead of Jerusalem, we named it to our members. Instead of Judea, to our community, and on down the line. And here you can actually see this page that I talked about, where they have on the menu Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the world. Another problem this site had that's shown here on this page is what I call navigational black holes. Once you navigate into the mission section, if you click on home, then that only takes you to the missions home page. If you wanted to return to the church's site homepage, then in the breadcrumbs below, you had to choose home to click on that. And that wasn't the worst of it. On the youth page, there was no home link, so there wasn't a consistency, and there were no breadcrumbs. And if you wanted to navigate back to the home page of the site, you had to scroll to the bottom, and in the bottom right corner you can see visit us at wcon.org, so you would have to click on that. So I called these navigational black holes, or more simply, bad design. Another area that we had a problem with was sermons. So the workflow that they had was on Friday, they would post the sermon notes for the upcoming weekend to the online sermon section. And then on Monday or Tuesday, they would post the actual audio file. So here's what happened to a regular user. They would go to the online sermon section. They would click on the topmost sermon or message, and it wouldn't play the audio because the audio hadn't been uploaded yet. So the user had to figure out that they should click on the next sermon down and then click on the audio file to start playing the sermon. So as a result of this workflow and site design, sermons on this page were basically broken 4 days out of 7. So that's just not acceptable. Another area of usability problem was the map. So this is the area at 118th and Sheridan in Westminster, and you can see where it has in the upper left corner, you see the word remedy. So if you're familiar with this area, what you know is that where the crosses are is actually where Kohl's department store is, and where the words remedy are, literally, is at 118th, and that's where Victory Church is, and not the Ignite/Remedy campus. So that was a big problem. The Remedy campus was actually west of Kohl's. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is our software, the Connect Daily Events Calendar plugin. And Connect Daily is an event publishing calendar, and it has integrated resource management that you can use to manage your rooms, your building rooms, vehicles, staff, whatever, in addition to publishing your events to the web. So we had some problems. Conversions weren't what we wanted. And the software had a 4-step conversion process. So step 1 is user installs the plugin, then they configure the plugin, they add a short code or widget to their design. Oh, and if I didn't mention this is a WordPress plugin. And finally, the user adds events to their calendar. Our conversion rate was about 16%, so I was not happy with that. We were converting about 1 in 6. So, what were my options? I thought about them really carefully, and what I decided my options were was I could moan about end users not trying hard enough. I could give up. Another option is randomly trying things, hoping for improvement. And what I decided to do was actually do usability testing with our plugin. So on step 1, here's what our configure screen, keeping in mind off to the right, we had the 4 steps to get started. If they've installed the plugin, obviously they've completed step 1. Step 2, create or configure the calendar. The problem we have here is if the user became distracted after they installed the plugin, there was nothing that would circle them back to configuring the plugin and completing the steps. Here's what it looked like after the user completed the step to configure the calendar. It looks like I needed to do a little testing on my slide there. So you can see we gave them feedback. We said that the calendar's been created. Click on Login to create events, and off to the right we gave them a check mark. And then to add a shortcode, when they went to the post or page editor, see that little calendar icon there? We needed them to click on that. So here's what we got after usability testing. After usability testing, after you install the plugin, there's now a calendar icon in the top menu bar with a message indicator similar to what WordPress uses, and also in the Connect Daily menu option along the dashboard sidebar, we have Connect Daily along with an indicator that there are some things that are going on. And we tell the person, if you look at the second message down, it says, now that you've installed the plugin, the next step to configure it is go to Connect Daily settings. So we're giving them instructions, and we're displaying this in the dashboard, in the menu ribbon bar, and in the left menu. So here's our new page. You can see we have the alert circle still showing up. We still have our 4 steps to get started, but what I realized is we should really put some links to our tutorials there on those steps. And also our overall tutorial didn't have a link. There's no link to the tutorial there, so we put the tutorial in there. And along the way, we added some options to provision a calendar that make later use much easier. So after they create the calendar, we're still giving them the feedback, and we're telling them, now that you've done this, you need to insert the shortcode. We have the indicator in the top level menu bar and in the left sidebar that there's still some sort of status task that needs done. And we also added onto the editor page a hint to tell them that they needed to click on the icon to insert a calendar. Now this is really interesting because our first effort, basically we had static text, and one of our users during the usability testing didn't see the static text. So I took that and I made the banner bigger, and also I put on a animated GIF to show the mouse. If this were animated, you'd see the cursor pointer going up and actually clicking on the icon to show the person. And then to be compliant with WordPress standards, we have disabled this hint checkbox so that the users won't see that. And where this is really useful is for us as a vendor is if the site is provisioned by a vendor but then transitioned over to an in-house management team, when the in-house people come to this page, they're all going to get this hint. So that's really good. Also, on the Connect Daily settings page, once they insert the shortcode, remember we still need them to add events. So on the left side, we're showing the status indicator, the message indicator. We're not showing this on the dashboard anymore, but we are still showing people, hey, there's something you need to know, and giving them the ability to acknowledge that hint. So here's the kitchen sink of what we found. Our provisioning, we had the option to provision resources, and our instructions were not very clear. Users didn't understand them, so we really worked on that. Our tutorial, I realized watching one of our testers do the tutorial, observe the tutorial rather, that it didn't demonstrate adding events, and also how to add events was not obvious. While observing one of our testers, I saw that our readme.txt file, which in WordPress is how the plugin directory gets data to show people, did not have key information above the fold. So I restructured our readme.txt to have key information above the fold. And this really brings up to why you should have the site designers and the people involved in the application, because they know the application, and when you do the usability testing, it does give them back somewhat the ability to observe the site as a beginner, so they will notice things. So you should definitely have people involved in a site. If you have a team, work and observe the usability testing. Okay, moving onwards. The icon that we had to insert the shortcode was non-obvious. And that's kind of a thing about WordPress is a very visually busy environment. The editor page has tons of things going on. There are lots of icons. So putting in that hint was really useful. Our widget configuration forms, we got some feedback from users that they were a little confusing. So we used placeholders to clarify some issues. Our shortcode dialog, we have a dialog that once you click on the calendar icon to insert a shortcode, a dialog appears that will generate the shortcode for you, but it didn't have a link to our tutorial. Our Create Cloud Calendar provisioning button was confusing. When people would click on it, they wouldn't know that something was happening. So we added a spinner to indicate that progress was happening. Another area, one of my tasks was, well, if you needed support, how would you find it? And our internal person hunted around and couldn't find how they would get to support. So it was buried, it was non-obvious, so we put that as a top-level issue or top-level item in our menu. And then internally into the cloud calendar, we made about 8 to 10 usability enhancements there. So what did we get out of it? What were our results? Well, remember earlier I said that the percent of users that completed all 4 steps went from 16%, was 16%, so it went from 16% to 75%. So that's an increase of 468% now complete all 4 steps to be what we consider to be a conversion or a successful installation of our plugin. So that's really a huge change. So in conclusion, usability testing doesn't have to be hard. And it doesn't have to be expensive. Looking at it, if you're just getting started, if you're having to buy Camtasia and a microphone, and you're looking for your initial round of expense, somewhere on the order of $600 to $800, $300-400 for your gift cards, $300-400 for your software and a microphone. And it can give you some big results. Going back to cost, but for second and subsequent rounds, you're already going to have Camtasia and your microphone, so your expenses are going to be lower. You're basically looking at your time and $300 to $400 for gift cards for your testers. And as I've shown you, usability testing can give you big results. We went up by a factor of 4 in terms of getting people to completely use our software. So That's the end of my presentation. Again, my name is George Sexton. My contact information is on there. If you're interested in having us help you with your usability testing needs, we're certainly available. Just give us a call. Thanks, and have a good evening.